Well, we're running out of 2022, so not much time left to get your question to Despina. If you have a question about the law, Despina we'll try and squeeze it in before Christmas. Just send it to us. Go to the website radio97.com.au, and right at the top there, you'll find a couple of ways to contact us. Send through that question, and Despina will do her best to answer it for you. So just go to the website radio97.com.au.
Alrighty. So this question has come from Darren. Thank you so much for calling in, Darren. He spends a lot of his time on the road. He does drive usually for work every day, and he goes between Queensland and New South Wales. So he phoned in and said, Desi, what does this mean? What do I do? Because he's been pulled over by the cops while he was eating a hamburger. That's the only information we know, but he's eating a hamburger while he was driving, and he got pulled over in Queensland, and they said, look, because you're on Queensland side, but you're from New South Wales, we'll let you off, but you can't eat and drive. That's all we know. And he goes, Despina, help. What does this mean? Does this mean we can never touch a water bottle while we drive? Does this mean we can't touch our chippies while we drive? What does the actual law say, Despina?
Fascinating story. I would love to have been a little fly on the door there inside the car to hear exactly what the police officer did say to Darren, because what you've just said, it doesn't really ring true in that police officer pulling you over for eating a hamburger and potentially issuing you with a fine. So it's a little bit odd, but in saying that, let's try and unravel what's happened here and try and make some sense of it. And I think if Darren's listening, I'm sure you are, you'll probably understand what we're about to say to try and explain. So first of all, there is no road rule or regulation in Queensland that says you cannot eat and drive. Okay.
There you go, Darren. So, mic drop. End of show.
But let's not tune out yet, because we want to talk about perhaps where they were really coming from. This is the police in Queensland, and that is about having proper control of a vehicle. Okay, so there is a regulation about that. Now, before we get into it, when I did some research, and I've gone on to Department of Main Roads and Queensland website, I've also gone on to Street Smarts, which is another website that's linked, which talks about, your road safety topics such as speeding, driver distraction, drink driving, driving whilst tired, seatbelts and restraints, and drug driving. So those are the topics listed. And when I went into driver distraction, thinking, yes, potentially you could sort of figure it out for yourself. If you're eating or drinking, maybe that's a distraction. So when you go into driver distraction, there is nothing in that on that particular website about eating or drinking. So there's no information I could find on the websites. But then, of course, I went to the regulations, which I would do. So that's the Transport Operations Road Use Management Road Rules regulation of 2009 in Queensland. And then, of course, it's right down the end of the regulations under Part 18, Miscellaneous Road Rules.
Of course.
The miscellaneous section.
The miscellaneous, geez, that could just, that's all in sundry, isn't it? So I thought, aha. And then when I had a look, there is this regulation, section 297, and talks about driver to have proper control of the vehicle at all times. So then we went into, I had a look at some of the subsections. So first of all, it says quite clearly, a driver must not drive a vehicle unless the driver has proper control of the vehicle.
Yep.
Okay, that's number one. And there's a maximum penalty there of 20 penalty units. They all have 20 penalty units. The second one is a driver must not drive a vehicle if a person or an animal is in the driver's lap. Okay, and this is all under the umbrella of a person has to have proper control of the vehicle. So you have to have proper control of the vehicle. You can't have an animal or a person in your lap. Of course, if you thought about that or, image, yes, they could easily distract you and you couldn't have a control of a vehicle. A driver must not drive a motor vehicle unless the driver has a clear view of the road and traffic ahead, behind, and to each side of the driver. Okay, so those are the main points. So when you think about eating food and drinking in a car whilst driving, could that be seen to not allow you to have proper control of a vehicle? Okay, and potentially, in theory, yes, depending on, I suppose, how you were eating it. Were you driving whilst trying to unwrap the burger, for example, which requires typically two hands, but maybe you could carefully do it with one hand? Do you have the food inside your lap? Are you looking down to eat and then look up at the road? So it depends on what happened with Darren. So I dare say there's probably a little bit more information to the story, and maybe Darren might want to share that after the show to you. But also I'd be curious to find out, where was the police officer? So did this happen whilst Darren stopped at a traffic light? Was it the case that the police officer was next to him in a car and saw him and observed him eating? Or were they behind him, following him for a while, and maybe Darren inadvertently, like not intentionally, slightly swerved the car, or maybe which might have triggered the police officer to pull him over? Or how did they observe him eating? This is really curious.
What was the trigger of the situation?
What was the trigger?
Say if he was at a light and he braked quite suddenly, and then they look over and notice him eating, they go, look, he's not focusing. Gotcha.
Exactly, because I've been at lights when I've been sitting next to police officers, and I'm here drinking my coffee cup. So, I mean, no one's pulled me over. So there must have been, I dare say, something else, or, maybe there's another intention behind it.
Well, Despina, of course, we're coming up to the holiday period very soon, which, of course, means double demerits and all that sort of thing. Is this something that we should be thinking about if we're doing quite a deal of long-distance driving across borders and all that sort of thing? Is it something that we obviously need to be aware about, especially if we're going into Queensland?
Look, I'm always an advocate for driving safely, and particularly when you do drive interstate. I've done hundreds of trips interstate myself, so they are long drives. You do get tired, so you do have to be quite wary of that, but also be very careful, of course, when you drive and drive properly and safely. But you need to be aware, and I'm sure New South Wales has a comparative provision, but you need to be aware that there are regulations that talk about you must have proper control of your car at all times. Okay, so that's just the general, topic or heading. So under that, you could think of a number of different circumstances where you might not have control of a vehicle. Not just about mobile phone use. We've already covered that last week. Everyone should be well aware of that. But yes, eating and drinking. If you have a dog in the car, if it's not restrained, or, there are lots of circumstances where if you look away from the road, then you're not going to have. And kids are a distraction
holidays,
as well.
Kids are going to be screaming and fighting in the back after a long
trip. Baby
trip.
crying in the back seat. Yes, absolutely. So you need to be mindful of these regulations. They do exist. And if the Queensland Police are out there, of course, monitoring people as they are, as we know every day, as other states' officers do, then you need to be aware of these road rules. They do exist. Be careful. And yes, proper control of a vehicle, well, that could encompass a lot of different types of examples. So, but, for a police officer to issue a fine based on you eating a hamburger, they'd have to have evidence that you didn't have proper control of a vehicle.
Boom.
There you go.
I love it. There you go, Darren. Thank you so much, Despina. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, for the Chrissy break, where can they go?
Yes, so they can phone the office 55 291 294. They can email info@prialalegal.com.au. I will put these up on YouTube at the end of the week. But of course, if anyone phones after the 23rd of December, we are no longer open for the Christmas for anyone. We're closed for about 2 weeks.
The whole month.
So, yes.
Yep.
We'll get a bit of a break, which is nice. Well, thank you so much again, Despina and Wayne. We'll catch you
next week.
See you then.